Hello, hello. This is Alex Burkett, and you are listening to the Long Game Podcast. In this episode, I'm chatting with Liz Willits. Liz is a conversion copywriter as well as a highly rated speaker, instructor, and marketing expert who has guided thousands and thousands of marketers and businesses. She's also got like 50,000 followers on LinkedIn and is an absolute influencer on the channel. In this conversation, we cover in detail her LinkedIn production process, from how she stores her ideas and comes up with ideas, to how she plans her posts, what frequency she posts, and how she knows what will and won't resonate, and how she experiments with different messaging. This is particularly interesting as I've been diving into the LinkedIn world myself in hopes of becoming a massive marketing celebrity, the next Neil Patel, if you will. One can dream. We also talk about productivity and creative output, a popular topic of mine, tips like splitting your day into 2 chunks, and how she goes for long walks daily while reading physical books. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Liz Willits. I want to talk to you about LinkedIn. That's the number one thing, because my growth marketer at Omniscient, Carissa, posted on Slack that we absolutely had to get you on the podcast because she's been following you on LinkedIn.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Well, it's rare that we hear that, right? Like that level of enthusiasm around getting a guest on the show. And it was all via your LinkedIn content. So maybe this is a hard question to answer because you're sort of reverse engineering your own process. But why do you think what you post on LinkedIn resonates so strongly?
So I think it resonates so much because it's based on like the frustrations and the pain points that marketers are going through and dealing with, related to copywriting and related to marketing. You know, I'm a marketer, I'm a copywriter, and I often post on, the frustrations and the pain points I've faced and how I've overcome them. And then also the frustrations and pain points that I know other marketers and other copywriters are facing and how they can overcome those. So, I'll hear a lot of marketers say, we want to be positive. Let's not focus on pain points. We want to use positive language. But pain is really successful when it comes to marketing and when it comes to LinkedIn, because ultimately we're all struggling with different things and looking for solutions to those problems. And just to frame things positively all the time doesn't necessarily resonate with people who are going through these work struggles and these professional struggles, and they're looking for solutions to those problems. And so I just talk a lot about what frustrates people and then how to overcome those frustrations.
Is it like people want to see themselves in your stories? They want to resonate with something that they're going through and you also seem to have gone through? Do you think that's it?
Yeah, I think they want answers to their problems. I know it's a really simple concept. And so they can see themselves in the content because this is a problem they've faced. And that's the kind of content that resonates with me too. When I see a creator talk about, for instance, how can I cut down the amount of time I spend writing LinkedIn posts? That resonates with me because, I've spent a lot of time writing LinkedIn posts. Whereas, I think it's just really just knowing the audience and the readers well enough to know what they're struggling with. But I strike out all the time. So I post stuff that doesn't perform and that I think the audience will resonate with. And it just doesn't. And that's a big part of it too, is testing. Marketing is all testing. And I think the people who are successful are just those who are testing enough and then learning from their tests. And testing all the time. So yeah, I still, even though I have 50,000 followers now, I still have posts that get no traction, which if you think about it that's sucks pretty bad. They must be terrible. But it's just keeping on and testing and finding what people like and then doing more of it. So if I find a post that really resonates, a topic that really resonates, I go all out on it and I'll do a series of posts on that topic.
I love that. Yeah. And we come from the background of content marketing from a blogging standpoint. So something we talk about is how you can't really test that as a channel, but you could test messages within that channel. But if you just do it via blog posts, it's so much effort to craft that individual post and there's usually a lag time in your feedback there. But Twitter, I think is particularly interesting because it's like almost instantaneous and then things fade after a couple hours. Whereas LinkedIn, you've still got a couple days where a post can resonate, but you can quickly see if what you're saying resonates. So I like that you're using it as a testing channel. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to say, and that's actually a way you could test blog topics. So if I see a post that gets a ton of traction on LinkedIn, I might write a blog post on it. And then if I have a post that gets zero traction, I'm not going to write a blog post on it because, like you're saying, blog posts are such a time commitment. So if we had a way of validating whether the topic would resonate before we went to all that work, it would be great. And social media can be a great outlet for that.
Do you think the fact that you've been able to get that feedback window with your audience, do you think that's made you better at predicting what will resonate and maybe morphing some of the content to become more receptive right away? Like, do you think your hit rate is getting better over time?
Yeah, absolutely. Writing every day, you just get better at writing. And, that's true if you're creating videos or any kind of content creation. The more you do it, the better you get. And the better the sense you'll get. Sometimes I know before I post a post that this will likely do very well or go viral. But there are other times where I think it will do that, and then it absolutely doesn't. But I do get a better sense as time has gone on, for sure, on what topics will resonate. And I know how to write in such a way to make a topic interesting, which is really helpful.
Because your background is in copywriting.
Yeah, my background's in copywriting and content marketing, and studying the psychological side of copywriting is really helpful when it comes to writing social media content. And then on top of that, understanding the content marketing side of how do you educate someone on an idea really clearly and in the least words possible. And that doesn't mean it's short, a short post. It just means that you use the least words possible to clearly convey this idea or this piece of education. And so it's like the combo of that background that has been really helpful for me. So I would tell everybody, study content marketing, study copywriting, and then practice every day.
Mm-hmm. Is your main business outside of LinkedIn right now? Is your main business copywriting consulting, or what are you doing now?
Conversion copywriting, almost entirely. So I do conversion copywriting for B2B SaaS companies. So typically helping them with their website content, Instagram, Facebook ads, and email marketing. Are
you also part of the Joanna Wiebe Mafia then?
Yes. Yes, of course.
Nice.
Yeah. Love Joanna Wiebe.
Copy Hackers was formative when I was starting to look into copywriting as well. And we've had on several people who have mentioned her as being formative to their career experience, getting into, conversion copywriting, whether that's landing pages, email, whatever the focus.
Yep. Yeah. She's phenomenal. I would say she's one of the best modern day copywriters out there. And is a very good copywriting educator. Which is, there just aren't a lot of great resources out there on modern day copywriting, digital copywriting. We have, I've read a lot of the great copywriters from, the 50s, 60s, and they're
David Ogilvy's and the Claude Hopkins and stuff like that.
Yep. And their concepts still resonate and still work today. But Joanna brings all of that into the digital era, which is really cool. It's kind of we're having this reawakening in copywriting right now, I feel, where people are realizing how important it is. And I worked in SaaS marketing all my career, and many of the teams I worked on, we didn't have a copywriter. We had content marketers, but we didn't have copywriters in-house, or we had ones that we freelanced with, we use as freelancers occasionally. But it's really important to have a copywriter.
Yeah, well, I feel like it's one of those things that, at least here in Austin, the internet marketing community is huge, which, there's some scamminess going on there, but there's also some really interesting marketers. And I think technique wise, they typically rely on copywriting, and you'll meet individual solopreneurs who are making millions just based on these ugly landing pages that have amazing copywriting and stories. So when I see that, I'm like, wow, what if you applied that same kind of methodology to true brands, to enterprises, instead of this bland conference room copy that you often see, especially in, B2B SaaS.
Yeah. And it's interesting when you do, I've done so much testing in this area, and B2B SaaS are very afraid. Many B2B SaaS founders are and the C-suite are very afraid of testing conversion copywriting. But they all love to double their conversion rates and revenue. That's what conversion copy can do for B2B SaaS. It's like, overnight you can double your sales from your website. And with just changing the copy. And now conversion copywriting is super research based. You're doing positioning, offer creation, and then, packaging all of that in combination with the copywriting. So it's not just like pretty words. It's a lot of research and then positioning that goes into that.
It seems like you focus on email primarily, or is that your main specialty when it comes to conversion copywriting, or do you apply this across multiple domains like landing pages or social or elsewhere?
Yeah, I apply it across multiple domains, but it's mostly like what you would consider in like an evergreen funnel, like copy pieces in an evergreen funnel. So website, email onboarding series for new customers or new leads. And then as well, Facebook, Instagram ads. So if you think about the acquisition funnel, most of the components in an acquisition funnel, I'll work with. And then I do touch on retention sometimes, but not so often.
Gotcha. How did you get into copywriting? Like, how did that journey happen?
Yeah, good question. So I was a content marketer for SaaS B2B companies for in-house for like 5 or so years when I started to transition into copywriting and understand how important it was. And I think one of my coworkers at the time, he came to a meeting and he like showed us this really long form sales page, like one of those ones that you just scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll. And I was like, what the heck is this? Like, get that ugly page out of here. Just like what you were talking about, the ugly,
like the blinking arrows and the big yellow highlights,
the ugly long form sales page. And he's like, what if we did this on our website, on our B2B SaaS website? And I was like, you're crazy, dude. And then, from there, I got interested in investigating it because I was like, okay, like what's up with this? And realized, that was when I started going down the rabbit trail of copy and then testing it and being like, whoa, this works. Who cares if we don't like it? It works. We as marketers might think, who cares what we think? If it works, it works.
Yeah, that's definitely the conversion side of your conversion copywriting coming out.
Yeah.
I come into the Peplaya school of conversion rate optimization, and it's like, this is what the data says. This is what we think. We're going to go with the data.
Yep. Yep.
So in your process of writing LinkedIn posts, how much of that do you think derives from your fundamental understanding of copywriting principles? Like you mentioned before, the substance, like you're tackling pain points that you go through that resonate with people, but you've got a pain point. Like, I feel like if I had a pain point, I could probably fuck that up and like write it poorly. Whereas you would take that same thing and maybe like add the stylistic components to make it resonate. Like what's the split there that you attribute your success to?
Yeah, I think my copywriting ability has a big part in it because I'll see great content on LinkedIn and, I'll read it and be like, oh, this is a great topic. And then I'll either continue reading it because I happen to be interested in what the person's putting out, or I'll stop reading it because it just doesn't keep my attention. And so, yeah, for a great post, you need a great idea and great copy or a great delivery, whether that's, that could be on video. So great idea, great delivery. And so you do need both. Sometimes you can have such a great idea that the delivery can be poor and people are still like, whoa, like we'll see sometimes those viral LinkedIn posts that, they're not very well written. But the idea was so appealing to so many people that it went viral. And sometimes on LinkedIn, those ideas might be very corny and like we're all rolling our eyes. But whether we're rolling our eyes or not, if it went viral, then the idea is really resonating with a lot of people. And so a powerful idea can do really well, even if it's not delivered very well. But the combination of both and then done consistently, that's how you build an audience.
Did you, I want to ask some wonky questions in a minute, but did you choose strategically to engage on LinkedIn to build kind of like your client pipeline to get clients there? Like, what was the impetus for creating content on LinkedIn in the first place?
Yeah, so I started doing it when I was in-house at a brand. And I really was doing it because I had started speaking and I was trying to build my like thought leadership as a speaker. So I'd started speaking at conferences and realized that all of these other, thought leaders, some people hate that term, but I'm just going to use it for here. All of these other thought leaders or educators in the marketing space, they had a content platform of sorts, and they were sharing their ideas all year long. And so that was a part of it, just wanting to build my own audience. And, then of course, when I knew I was leaving my job and starting my own business, which had been a plan for a few years, I knew it would come in handy, and it absolutely has. It's been a huge driver for my business. And, when people say LinkedIn doesn't work, at least, it works for me. And it really works very well for B2B brands.
So this is all selfish, by the way, because we're trying to do this on LinkedIn as well. Like me personally, I'm trying to build my following up there. Do you have a plan to harvest some of the attention and interest and audience that you get on LinkedIn and bring that to somewhere else? Like, is it simply enough that you're getting likes and engagement and comments on LinkedIn itself, or are you then, doing outbound and reaching out to these people or bringing them to your website, or is it just isolated to the LinkedIn platform?
Yeah, so I do try to bring people to my website. So that's definitely a goal. But I get a lot of, people don't even need to visit my website for me to have leads. But I don't do any direct outreach really to any people, sales outreach to anyone who comments on my posts.
It's more like inbound. Somebody's just going to DM you and say like, hey, this is really interesting.
Yeah.
Love it if you could look at my website or something.
It's 100% inbound. So I don't do any cold emails. I don't do, outreach of that kind. And I really, I'm a saleswoman because I'm a copywriter, but I like to sell via content marketing and copywriting rather than, outbound, if that makes sense.
Right. Like cast a wide net rather than do one-to-one kind of like manual outreach.
Right. And it flips the relationship completely when someone's reaching out to me and seeing if I can help them, than me like harassing them. That's how we perceive outbound sales, is like someone's harassing us. Sometimes it is perceived better, but I often perceive it as like this person's bothering me. And so it's really nice to flip that relationship and have people, inbound is just so beautiful that way. It just changes the entire relationship. You're not selling to them, you're just helping them.
Right. Well, I feel like you hit on something, which is like what copywriting is in a nutshell is some sort of sale. It's like one-to-many sales via, I don't know if you think it's via the written word or via multiple modalities. I guess you actually just published a post today that I found interesting. You said like your website is copy, emails are copy, search ads are copy, and social posts are copy. So I wanted to ask like where you draw the line between what is copy, what is content, or like what is not copy in your mind?
Yeah. So I now, not a lot of people agree with me, but I think everything should be copy. Like your content marketing should be copy, in that it should still be educational, but educational, like our content, the goal of our content marketing is to build an audience, to build awareness, and ultimately to sell. Like no one's putting out content unless they're trying to earn some kind of money from it. There are probably some, people out there, but not many businesses. And so I think every piece of copy should be using conversion copywriting within it to make it better, every piece of content. And there are just a few things you can do to make it easier to read the content. It's not necessarily, having something to sell every time, but giving people an action to take after they read the content, and also writing it in such a way that they keep reading using conversion copywriting principles. So I call it conversion content because it, applies a bit of both principles. And I think a great thing that content marketers can do is study some basics of conversion copywriting and then try applying those things to their blog posts. And it can be really helpful.
Yeah, I actually think it shouldn't be, but I actually think that's a mildly contrarian opinion because a lot of content teams are so distanced from the revenue that they're producing and the ROI and attribution calculations that most actually I don't think they approach content from the lens that this should sell. But obviously, if you abstract yourself out to the business level, it's like this function wouldn't exist if it didn't sell.
Yeah.
But I do think it's mildly contrarian today.
Yeah, it is. There are many people who would disagree with me. But when I write blog posts, I use conversion copywriting principles. And I think they make the posts much better.
Totally. I'm on the same page. Can we get wonky about your operational process for producing on LinkedIn?
Sure.
So I'm thinking like, when you're running a blog, especially if you have multiple team members and freelance writers, you're typically going to create a plan. It's maybe going to be a content roadmap report with a bunch of keywords or topic ideas, maybe outlines. And then you typically operationalize that in some sort of a content calendar, right? Some sort of production cadence. Yeah. But there's multiple components that build into that. It's like the ideation process. How do you store your ideas? How do those ideas go into a prioritization framework? And then how do you end up launching those and analyzing those? So how structured are you with regards to your LinkedIn production? Like from the start, like how do you store ideas?
Got it. Yeah, good question. And I would say it depends on the week and how crazy the week is. But I'll describe my ideal situation to you. So I use Notion to store ideas. I used to use Google Docs, and I had this like 109-page Google Doc called the idea jar. And I had it bookmarked on my computer. And as you can imagine, 100+ page Google Doc is not the best system and quickly becomes overwhelming. So I switched over to Notion, and now I kind of have basically what's kind of like an Excel sheet within Notion. Not quite, but it's a chart. And I have post ideas and then the status of them. So when I have an idea, I'll put it in there. And
wait, so sorry, when you have ideas, is this like a random thing? Like, are you walking down the street? Is this like when you're reading a book, or do you sit down specifically to say like, I'm going to come up with 10 ideas?
Both. So anytime I have an idea, I go right in and document it in Notion, because those are sometimes my best ideas when I'm walking, when I'm working out.
You have like the Notion app for that?
Yeah. And so I have the Notion app, just jot them down. And then I also I'll set aside a few hours each week to do like a brainstorm where I dump ideas, and then I also start to write ideas. And I try, in an ideal week, I try to write all of next week's posts and then schedule them in an ideal week. But that doesn't always happen. Sometimes it's the morning of and I'm writing a post. What I've learned is just to make sure I post, and how I get there matters less than doing it. And I know a lot of people have very strict LinkedIn systems, but mine is adaptable in the sense that, 1 week it might work to do it all ahead, and the next week I might be doing it day by day.
Like you schedule it out, you mean? Sometimes?
Yeah, I'll schedule it out. So I use, right now I'm using Meet Edgar to schedule it out. But then other times I'm doing it, posting it that morning. Yeah.
And you try to hit a certain target of like number of posts per week? Yeah,
I try to hit 5 a week.
So like one a day, basically.
Yeah. Every weekday I do one.
You write in the morning, or you publish in the morning, or?
Yeah, I publish in the morning. I try to do around 8:30 if I can.
Have you tested that?
It's really hard to like A/B test it on social. But not officially, I can say that I've found that afternoon posts don't do as well for me.
Right. People are signing off. They're not on LinkedIn at 7 p.m. typically.
Yeah. They're typically on there in the morning. They come in, they start work, and they're like, oh, let me check LinkedIn, because we're all distracted all the time. They check LinkedIn. And I feel that based on my testing, which is not super scientific, because it's not A/B tests, I prefer the morning for sure.
And have you tested different frequencies? Like, do those 5 posts matter versus like 2 posts or 3 posts? I mean, obviously, like more frequency gives you more at bats. So one could go viral, and you wouldn't need as good a prediction abilities the more you're publishing. But yeah, I guess like what's your testing you've done with frequency?
My following increases much more quickly when I'm posting regularly, which of course like seems like it would be obvious. But I could have, and it's partly about having those at bats, because like I said, sometimes I have a good sense for what's going to perform and other times I don't. So it's, about posting really regularly. And if I was, really being aggressive, I'd probably post 7 days a week, 7 to 14. Sometimes I post twice a day, and the second post will perform better than the first. So, I think the more you can post, the better. But I've also gone stints where I've posted once a week or twice a week. And it's okay. Like it's fine. But in the ideal situation, you're posting a lot, you're top of mind, and you're posting valuable stuff when you post, not just, for the sake of pushing out quantity.
Right. I mean, for quality, I would say is table stakes in many cases, but you do want that repetition factor, especially if like, you're competing against many other people on LinkedIn creating content. And typically if you see somebody once, like you're going to forget that within a couple of days. You see them twice and you're like, oh, that's interesting. But you see them all the time. You see Dave Gerhardt every day and you're like, oh, wow, Dave's doing some interesting stuff over here. I'm going to follow this person. So there is a certain amount of repetition that you need.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know if you're familiar with Justin Welsh. He's another one, but he posts twice a day pretty regularly and at least posts 7 times a week. And I don't even know how many followers he has now, probably like 200K. But I mean, another thing that, a good, like what Justin Welsh does and what I try to do is post formatting really matters. So formatting your post in such a way that it's super readable makes a difference, especially
so like one line at a time.
Yeah, I know. And it can be,
it's interesting because
it's not even just one line at a time. There's almost this sense for which I haven't figured out a formula or a way to describe it easily, but a post that looks good. I can tell by looking at a post whether it's going to be pretty readable or not. And some of it is variation. So if you just have like 5 really short sentences, repeated, it's really boring looking. And so if you can do short, a little bit longer, short, a little bit longer, it's actually visually more appealing. Well,
that's something that it's almost like the musicality of language. And I think people, describe that as being something that stylistically makes like books interesting too, novels. If every sentence is Hemingway-esque, it becomes a little bit trite and boring. So you want to kind of like alter the length, have a couple words here, a long run-on sentence here, a shorter one here. Yeah.
Right. However, I would say, never have a long run-on sentence. So right. I would, shorten that into 3 sentences, even if those 3 sentences aren't sentences. Even if one is not a complete sentence, as our high school English teacher would have told us it's a complete sentence.
Mm-hmm. Back to the ideas. So when you write these ideas down, how much do they resemble the end result of your writing that you publish on LinkedIn? Is it like a couple words that you just kind of like know the meaning of, and then you expand it out, or like, what's the seed of the idea look like compared to the final product?
Yeah. So sometimes it's just the concept, and I would never publish anything like what I wrote in Notion on LinkedIn because it's just the concept. And other times as I'm thinking through this, I have the concept, I have like a hook in my mind, like, oh, that's a good hook. And so then I might write out the first few sentences because as I thought of it, I had a good hook and I don't want to lose that. Because if I come back later, I'll have forgotten for sure that what the hook was that I was thinking of. And sometimes I go in and it's just a rough idea and I have to figure out how to format it. Like, what's the hook? What's the story here? What's important? What's not? So it can be both, which I know isn't super helpful. Like, everyone wants a clear, this is exactly what to do every time. But yeah, sometimes it's more developed, sometimes it's not. What I try not to do is distract my focus at the moment of what I'm doing to go write this LinkedIn post. Because that's like one of the things I'm intentionally trying to do in my business and my life in general is when I'm focused on a task, complete it, whatever it is. And if there's distractions that pop up that I'm like, in my mind is like, oh, don't forget that. I jot them down and then I get back to my task. And so that's how I view when I have LinkedIn ideas and I'm focused on another task, or when I'm focused on the task of writing my LinkedIn posts, I try not to get distracted by anything else either.
Have you had to ward off the attention deficit disorder and shiny object syndrome? Is that something you've actively had to fight against?
Yes, because I have a million ideas every day of like all these things I could do, and all these businesses I could launch and everything I could do to promote my business. So 100% a big part of what I'm doing in 2022 is building systems to be more focused, having more clarity and cutting down on what I'm doing at one time, so that I can actually get done the one thing. Because I definitely have like so many ideas and not enough time to implement them all.
Yeah, you and me both.
Yeah.
That's something that I struggle with because I see other people who can maintain many things in their brain and still focus on the one thing at a time. But for me, like when I've got all that in my head, like I end up diluting my focus where I don't get the one thing done. So I have to just take a chunk out of what's in front of me and really just forget everything else. So like when we're planning even things with our agency, my co-founder is very good at like mapping out like a calendar's year worth of different strategic initiatives. And I'm like, I'm just going to do the first thing. Like I'm not even going to think about 2 months from now. When we get there, that's great. Like it's on our list. It's off-minded, but like I can't in my brain think about anything else than what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, that's typically how I am. And I'm trying to stretch myself in that way. Cause sometimes I've been like, man, I need to find a co-founder who can be what your co-founder is to you. And I've thought about that for sure. And now I'm at this point where I'm like, no, right now, it's not my natural bent to do long-term planning. Like I like to focus on, I'm just like you. But I'm trying to force myself to do more of the long-term planning, because it's so important. That it gets done, whether it's your co-founder doing it or you doing it. But in my case, it has to be me. And then I hire people. I'm trying to hire people more and more to do the implementation. And you're having agencies, so you understand that, of course.
But delegations is everything for sure. And that was an inclination that I had to fight against too. Like I'm very much into rolling up my sleeves and doing the things myself. And that level of like control freak is just a killer for later on in your business. So I think it's more of a psychological thing than anything else. It's like, how do I trust people enough to give up control and, focus on the next task for myself and let other people do the things that we've kind of already created playbooks for.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
I always ask like what your production function is. And you've described it a little bit, but like, how would you describe your working style and how you get so much done?
Yeah. So my working style is I work best when I am able to focus on one thing. And so I use this tool called Motion. So I think if people want to check it out, it's trymotion.com. So that's not actually right.
Is it Momentum?
No, let me think. What is the actual link? But you can drop it. I'm sure you can use Motion. It's usemotion.com. It's called Motion, rhymes of Notion, which is confusing because I also use Notion. But what Motion does is it's like a task and project manager, but it also does what Calendly does and manages your calendar. But what I really love about it is you can enter all of your tasks, how long they're going to take, what their deadlines are, blah, blah, blah. And then it'll schedule time blocks on your calendar to do all of your tasks. So it'll build your schedule for the week. And then when I go and look at my calendar, I always know exactly what to do next without having to do the planning, because Motion's put it on my calendar. So I'll know like, the next 2 hours, I need to work on this task and get it done. And then Motion scheduled it on my calendar in such a way that it'll get done by deadline. So I find that super helpful. Any tools you can use to kind of offload the planning are really helpful.
Does your brain ever rebel against you? Like if you've got a 3 p.m. write this article time, does your brain ever say, I don't want to write this article. I want to write this LinkedIn post?
Oh yeah, all the time. And that's like, that's the constant fight. And I think like I've done some studying into willpower and focus. And from what I've read, you can strengthen your ability to focus. Although, of course, some people have that ability more than others naturally. So what I'm trying to do is strengthen my ability to focus. But I've also, read that we have a limited amount of time that we're able to focus each day. This is like a whole, another rabbit hole.
Ego depletion kind of stuff.
Yeah. So like you have
But
to
apparently
be,
that is true too. Like there's been all these like social psychology trends that have actually been reversed and not replicated. But I was reading a meta-analysis of all that stuff, and apparently the willpower thing where it depletes throughout the day is actually that's been replicated. So
yeah. And, for me, that's why I put my hardest tasks in the morning. And then I try to do meetings, podcast interviews, things where I'm like, I have no option but to do this because there's another person involved who's keeping me accountable. I put those in the afternoon because for me, I'm a morning person. I'm most focused in the morning. I feel like my willpower is best in the morning. And in the afternoon, it's nice to have the social tasks where you have accountability because another person's involved.
I'm the same way. Heads down in the morning, any creative tasks in the morning, and then social, sales, meetings, podcasts, anything that's heads up in the afternoon. It's. I think I'm better at those things in the afternoon than the morning anyway, probably because I've had enough caffeine. But also, I'm completely worthless to the other tasks in the afternoon. So it's like, why even try at 3 p.m. to write an article?
Right. Yeah, 100%. Creative work has to be in the morning. And then I'll do like things like what I'm trying to change is, I go in and first thing in the morning as I check my email, respond to clients, check LinkedIn, check things like that. Those things, because you have the endorphins of a notification, you can do them at 5 p.m. when your energy is depleted and when you're tired, because like they're just easy, at least for me, they're easy tasks. There's an endorphin mentality to the notification. And it's just busy work compared to creative work.
Wait, so you're recommending not rolling out of bed and checking Twitter first thing in the morning?
Yes. And I have a 20-step morning routine that—
Wait, really?
No, I'm just
like,
joking. First,
like the CEO's master morning. Like
you wake up at 3 a.m. and you have 3 glasses of tea. And then
to be specifically matcha tea brewed in the Himalayas and meditate for 60 minutes, 62 minutes, actually.
Yes, 62. Ugh. Actually, that's a, copywriting little thing that copywriters use is specific numbers are much more believable than like 60 minutes. So yeah, if I was going to write a post on that, I would definitely be like 62 minutes of meditation. I don't know. That's an aside, but
do you have any of these morning? It doesn't have to be morning routines, but you mentioned that you're trying to strengthen your willpower. So like, I'm curious how you're thinking about doing that.
Yeah. So a part of it is we're strengthening willpower. It's habits. Forming habits is really helpful. So I do have a morning routine to answer that question first. That's not stringent in the sense that it has to happen every morning the exact same way. But I try to wake up at 5 a.m. I try to get 8 hours of sleep, or, I try to wake up between 5 and 6. Again, I'm a morning person, so this works really well for me. And then I get up, I have my breakfast, make coffee, and then I'll read for a while because I hate starting the day. And the first thing I do is work. Like I love to start the day by learning. And that's, that really inspires me for the day.
Do you read nonfiction or fiction typically?
Usually nonfiction in the morning. I'll read fiction at night. Just like, I love to read. So I'll read fiction at night. It's kind of like, I consider that more like for fun.
Right. And it's relaxing before bed too. It reduces the burden of your mind. Whereas like the nonfiction, at least because it's funny, I have a very similar routine. So, but the nonfiction for me starts my logical thinking. I don't know if it's logical thinking, but it kicks my work brain into motion. Whereas like when I read fiction, that actually unplugs me from that style of thinking.
Got it. Yeah, I would agree. I'd agree with that.
Like if I read nonfiction before bed, that would probably keep me up at night.
Yeah, because your mind would be churning. Yeah, I usually don't read, like, especially not business books.
No.
Before bed, because I started this thing where I walk like 30 minutes to an hour a day, or try to. It's not always perfect, and I read as I walk, and I always read business books. And
wait, you made a gesture like a physical book as you're walking. Are you walking with a physical book?
Yes, I know. I'm like the nerdy person in my neighborhood who walks with a book. And I've had a lot of people stop me and be like, how do you walk with a book? And I don't know. I just do it. And it's probably dangerous, but I'm on sidewalks. So, but that like inspires me so much. I've gotten so many great ideas. And sometimes I just, on those walks, I stop reading because I'm just thinking so much and I can't even read anymore because I have so many ideas churning. It's like, I don't know if it's the combination of the movement, which, is good for us. It also gets your mind going, but I think it's a combination of both. But yeah, like I will get so many great ideas on those walks while reading. And I have to keep telling myself that's really productive to do that, because my first thought is, oh, I should be working. Like I can't walk that long in a day, or I don't have time to walk today. I have work. But it's some of my most productive time because I get these just ideas that can last for months and have been really influential in my business.
I have to tell myself the same thing because it's like we're ingrained with this idea that we should sit at our desk and do work. But I think it was Naval Ravikant that talked about how we should work like lions, not cows grazing, but you hunt for a little, then you rest and recharge, and then you hunt for a little and rest and recharge. And it's that yin and yang that produces very quality, effective work versus just being very like process efficient and sitting there for 10 hours doing like minimal effort, but pushing it all day out. So I found that I also like that you have a weird habit. So the reading and walking, I like that's unique because for me, I try to walk a lot too, but I go to this place near me. It's like a athlete recovery lab, and they have a sauna, an ice bath, and hot tub, and you do like an hour session. And that's where I get my ideas. Like I'll walk back and I'm like, oh my God, it is probably some, endorphin, like epinephrine rush from the ice bath or something like that also spurs me awake. But some days I do it mid-afternoon and I'm like, oh, I should be working right now. But then I come back brimming with ideas and energy. So it's like that. It's not work per se, but it is work, if you look at it holistically.
Yeah, I love the line quote first off, and then I absolutely agree. And it's this, I've had to switch my mentality because I had the same feeling. We sit at our desks, like I must sit at my desk from like whenever I start work till 5 p.m. and I can have a quick lunch break, but then I'm back to my desk. And I had that mental like mindset. And then every afternoon around 3 p.m., I'd be like, oh man, it's really hard to focus right now. I'm so tired. And starting in 2022, now what I do is, I like do 2 chunks of work in the day. Mm-hmm. So I usually work from like 7 to 11. And then from 11 to 1, I walk and lift and have lunch. So I take this 2 hour, sometimes 2.5 hour break. And then I restart work like around 1:30 and work till 5. And it has like made my afternoons so much more productive because the exercise just wakes me up and the break is just really effective as far as being able to focus later. And then on top of that, I'm so consistent about my workouts, like, because I used to work out after work, and how sometimes after work, you'll have like some sort of social thing. And then you're like, oh, well, I won't work out today. And so now I'm so consistent about working out because it's midday. And it's also taught me that like, hey, we do what we prioritize. And so we always just prioritize work. That's the one thing we prioritize over everything else. And so no wonder like we're losing our workouts, and we're not, reading, taking classes and doing all these other things that could be so good for us. We just have in the US anyway, we have this like work mentality.
100%. Yeah. And I guess like the earlier in the day you can get done your priorities, the better it is mentally speaking, because then you have less opportunity to make excuses later, like your workout example. I try the workout thing in the afternoon sometimes, and some days it works very well for me. I'll come back refreshed, but I lift weights as well. And it's like, if I ever do like a heavy squat day at like 1 p.m., I'll come back and I'll have meetings later and I'm completely exhausted. Like I've just shocked my nervous system where I'm like, oh, I need a nap now.
Yep. Yeah. And that's where like, I think everyone, this mentality of everyone has to have this one schedule and do it this way is so wrong. Like we're all different. And I think having the ability to have some level of customization to your schedule can be really powerful as far as productivity. So anyone who works for me, like, I don't care what their schedule looks like. I just care that the work gets done. Because I know for myself that, being able to customize my schedule and get out of the 9 to 5 mentality was really helpful in increasing my productivity.
Totally. Same here. So when you think about your trajectory and like where you're going, um, what's your long game? Like, is there somebody you're chasing? Do you have like inspirational examples of like where you want to be career wise?
Yeah. So my goal right now and what I'm actively working on is transitioning into more education. Like I love like marketing education, copywriting education, and which I know like everyone's doing. But I think it's all about, doing it really well because
Hmm.
I love, like I teach for University of Vermont and I've done different courses and I used to speak at webinars all the time. And I love that. I'm so passionate about it. And just doing like building a content business, a media business is one of my big goals moving ahead. And I still love copywriting. So doing copywriting for very select clients and then using my work and for educational purposes. So that's my long-term vision for like the next couple years. But I mean, like I'd also like to retire really young.
Hmm.
You know,
But do you mean retire as in like you have all the options and you don't have to work, but you probably will? Because I couldn't
yes.
imagine like the way you've described your routine and everything. Like I couldn't imagine you sitting there and just like reading fiction on the beach.
Yeah, no, it would be retire in the sense that I don't have to work anymore.
Right.
Um,
You could write a book or get into
right.
real estate or
Like just do my
whatever.
passion projects and, focus. Probably I just go into entirely like marketing education and content creation and building different like thought leadership businesses, which I think is so fun. But yeah, it would just change my focus a bit. But I love work. So
Hmm.
it'd be kind of hard to, I don't imagine myself retiring in the sense that like, oh, now I'm just gonna, do nothing.
What are some
Um,
things you would want to do if you were quote unquote retired?
oh, um, so let me think about that. So for one, I would love to start a business focused on productivity. And like hire a team. Like part of the financial independence is being able to hire people for these businesses that I want to build after I retire.
Hmm.
Um, so like, yeah, I'd love to do a productivity focused business because I'm so fascinated with that and education on productivity. Um, Copywriting and marketing, I would still continue with that. Um, but then I might branch into like, I had this idea recently, like about the housing crisis, and how affordable housing is really difficult to find for a lot of people. And I thought it'd be cool. And then also how financial education on investing on good financial habits is sometimes like so unattainable for people. So I had this idea to have like to build some kind of tiny house or housing community where you also offered uh, financial classes and investment classes. And it was like basically no cost to live there, which would require like financial independence to be able to do
Hmm.
something like that. But like just to give, I just think so many people don't have um, and opportunities like that. And I think who we are surrounded by often determines who we become. And, it would just be really cool to be able to help in those circumstances.
Yeah, it's badass that you said that. I've thought quite a bit, a weird amount about building tiny home communities. And I've thought about like, could it be centered around education and like mutual interest? And like, if everybody wants to become a great musician, like, could you build tiny home communities like that? Or could it be centered around health and wellness, just as a holistic thing? Because I think like the common interest and educational aspect is interesting. But I think more so our generation and increasingly in future generations, it just feels like there's this longing for connection.
Mm.
And like it's especially during the pandemic, I feel like that's just been ruptured even further and like all the digital lives we live. So I always think like I mean, I would love to be in like a tiny home community surrounded like by 10 of my best friends or something and their families.
Yeah. It'd be like college again.
And I miss
Um,
that. I miss hanging out and like, walking down the street and going and watching TV
mhm.
just randomly and casually without having to plan like a whole trip across the city for next
Yeah.
month.
Yeah, that would be sick. Yeah, like that would be, I think that's one of the reasons we all look up, like back on college with like such nostalgia because just like living by all your friends is so awesome.
Yeah. I just love this thought exercise of like what you would do if you're retired. Cause it's like, could I do some of that now? I start thinking about
Yeah.
that and it's like, maybe.
Yeah. What would you do if you, retired?
So I'm a million ideas a day type of guy. Like I have to legit I'll buy the domain and then I'll just like stop talking about it. I don't think I love building. I love building things from 0 to 1. So I think I would still probably want to build businesses, but I would do so probably in a space that's a little bit riskier and I don't have as much of a like I don't have a presence in. Like I really love health and wellness.
Mm-hmm.
Building tiny home communities would be fascinating to me. Sort of the commune idea that's very popular in this generation now. I would love to write a book. I think I can do that during my time at the agency because I think that could be like a lead generation, authority building thing. But I would like to write a book outside of content, and I would like to write it about, I don't know, like you know how Malcolm Gladwell just like gets obsessed with a topic and just does a bunch of research and interviews, and like it's almost like journalism. Like I would like to do something like that.
That's so cool. We're
But
very similar people.
Totally. Yeah. Unfortunately, we're coming up at time. I wish we actually booked like 2 hours because there's a million more questions I want to ask you. But yeah, I do have a hard stop. Where do you want people to find you online?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn under Liz Willits. You can also find me on Twitter under Liz Willits, or my website is lizwillits.com, just to keep it simple. And if you go to my LinkedIn profile, I have a free guide there you can download, and you can join my email list too.
What's the free guide about?
It's called How to Get Benchmark Busting Open Rates. I'll talk about, like in my newsletter, I talk about things like copywriting, content creation, all of those things.
Nice. I'm going to sign up.
Cool.
Thank you so much for this. This is super fun.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for having me, Alex. And thank you.